Hello everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to today's live. We're going to talk about cutaneous chemistry. It is our skin lesson. I am Manuela and Marcheggianni. This is
Darius Majlessi.
And we're from Isomers Skincare, cosmetic chemists, scientists, biochemists, and skincare experts. We have been formulating skincare for over 35 years in Toronto, Canada. We have a manufacturing site. We do the innovation, we do the manufacturing, we do the formulation, we do the testing, we do the packaging, everything here in Toronto, Canada. So this means that none of our products or formulas are outsourced. We do everything in-house. And this is really important to us because we use isomeric chemistry, we use evidence-based chemistry. We want to create the best skincare out there. We want skincare that makes a difference. Part of what we do is the way we formulate is we have a very certain perspective on the skin, the ingredients, the body, the age and stage. So what we want to do is we want to welcome everybody in to these kind of lessons, to this information that usually you don't get out there. So without further ado, we're going to start today focusing in on pigmentation.
Right.
Take it away.
It's a quite fascinating thing. It can be intimidating. That's why a lot of people really stay away from the science of it. But one of the things that we're trying to do here for you, we're trying to take something that can be potentially complicated, especially if you don't have a chemistry or biochemistry or a biology background, then you don't want to touch it, you get intimidated by it. We want to simplify that for you. We want to simplify that you can understand the real basics. And why is that so important is that once you know those basics, you can make more informed decision about the type of products you can buy for yourself in terms of getting better results, kind of separating the real stuff from the fake stuff, and making good choices about the ingredients that your skin needs, not necessarily what people want to sell you.
Right. And this is the whole thing about what we do at Isomers. We're trying to really explain the ingredients and the science of what's going on. Because a lot of people want to change, they don't like their pigmentation, or they have spotty pigmentation or an even pigmentation. So we're going to talk about all of these variances. But let's start off right off the bat. Pigmentation is characteristic. Everybody has a color. Right. And there's nothing wrong. There's not a right color or wrong color. Everybody is unique in a color because the color you are really is about where your ancestry comes from, the UV exposure, the evolution. In climates that are hotter and more UV, you have darker pigmented people. In climates that are less UV and colder, you have lighter pigmented. And this is because nature is protecting you from the environment. So your pigmentation is a blanket of defense.
Right.
So we want to understand why sometimes the pigmentation changes, why sometimes we end up with more spots in certain areas or issues with our pigmentation.
And remember, that pigmentation that's on your skin has a very, very important function, and that is protecting your skin from the UV light. So the melanin, the ingredient that creates the color in your skin, is the natural sun protection factor.
Right. So which doesn't mean you don't use sun protection factor if you have darker skin. So this is something to, yes, the melanin is protecting you, but it is an evolutionary thing, so you can't go without sunscreen.
Right, exactly.
It's a different mechanism.
So let's start. Let's talk about pigmentation. And we go to the first part here. You know, if you watched our show last week, we talked about the structure of the skin. And in there, one of the important components, one of the important cells. So if you look at the epidermis, at the bottom of the epidermis, I'm going to see if I can enlarge it.
Woohoo!
You see this thing that looks like a hand? That's a cell, okay? And that is called a melanocyte. The melanocyte is what actually synthesizes, it's the cell that actually creates melanin. Melanin is that pigment that really gives your skin the color. The color of your skin is based on the amount of melanin this creates. Now, in here, you see a lot of dots. So this melanin has something inside it, I'm going to get a little more detail, called melanosome. So think about a hand that is like a balloon shaped like a hand. It's three-dimensional, and inside it has a lot of bubbles. And these bubbles that are called melanosomes, they actually synthesize melanin. They go from these extensions and they spread into the cells around your skin. So statistically, there is one melanocyte, one melanin cell, that colors 36 cells around it. Okay? So this is what produces the color for skin. That's very important for you to remember. Now let's go a little bit further. Now we're talking about the color of your skin. This melanocyte that has these melanosomes in it, I get into a little bit of the chemistry of it on the next couple of slides, but they basically produce two types of melanin. One melanin that's called pheomelanin is dark or brown, and the other one that's called eumelanin is yellowish to red color. So people that have freckles, when these melanosomes are making the melanin, the reaction pathway, it kind of divides. I'm making it very broad statements. And if it goes towards this part a little bit more, then you have more freckled skin. If it goes to this side more, then you have more tanned or pigmented skin. Now, if this individual cells, so imagine if your skin like a brick wall, that every so many bricks, there's one melanocyte there that colors 36 bricks. Now, if one of those melanocytes that colors the 36, it starts overacting, but not the other ones, not like the other ones. So one of them is overacting, jumping up and down and making too much, and the other ones are just acting normally. That's when you get your pigmentation. That's when you get your sunspots. That's when you get the freckles. They're just overacting. So overacting either regarding the eumelanin or pheomelanin, it is going to decide if you're going to get the freckles or if you're going to get the pigmentation. So this is important for you to understand, because there are so many ingredients that work in controlling the mechanism of this process. And this is what you need to understand, because when you go to buy a skin lightening product, you need to understand where the problem is coming from.
Right.
And this is how we're going to explain to you as to
And
how
which one it's addressing,
Exactly.
right? So, and the other one, I think people are going to have the question, do they have all four possible colors within their skin?
Right, a combination. Remember, if you're into color cosmetics and makeup artists, so when you want to create a particular color, you blend different colors together to get the color, the final color that you want. And your skin basically does that. When it does this in a uniform way, then you have that uniform color that is light, pink, darker shade.
Cool tone, warm tone, it's all based on these four.
When it doesn't work uniformly, some of these cells are overacting and creating one of these guys, too much of one of these guys, then that's when you get the spots. Now, contrary to overacting is if you take these melanocytes completely out and completely destroy them. So there is an autoimmune disorder that your own cells in your body, your macrophages, they start attacking the melanocytes. And they think by mistake that these guys are the enemy. They're not supposed to be there. And when they start attacking these, that is when you get vitiligo. Because when these guys are not there, then you're gonna get no pigmentation, those white spots, and that's what I was trying to show on this picture here. This beautiful face, these parts, the melanocytes are destroyed, so there's no color. We're gonna get into that a little bit more. Now, I want you to understand that this process of pigmentation is based on many things. First of all, is based on melanocytes. It's obvious. No melanocytes, no pigmentation. If there's no factory to make it, no pigmentation. Now, these melanocytes get a signal. Your body has a genetic code that gives a signal. Make more melanocytes. It has a switch. These genes, they're turned on and off. So there is a gene that is turning off the synthesis of these cells. So one of the things that we want, if we want to promote color, we want to do things that they upregulate the gene. That means that we go and tickle those genes to make more melanocytes, because more melanocytes, more color. And those genes can get on and off. There are three key things. I know there are some of you guys that are great scientists, and they're going to say, well, there's more than what Darius is saying. I'm just picking the important ones that I want you to remember. Right. The story is much more sophisticated than this, what I'm telling you. So there is an alpha MSH, that is the melanocyte stimulating hormone. Then there is a transcription factor, MITF. And then there's a tumor growth factor, beta 1. These three components, they, in a way, their upregulations of these ingredients will either turn on and off these melanocyte synthesis. So as biochemists and formulation chemists, when we design a product that we want to really help control the pigmentation, we look at molecules, we look at herbs, we look at ingredients that affect these three things. That's part of the formulation. So overall, less of these cells, less pigmentation. That's one step. Now, we go one more thing. Now, remember, I told you that now we are focusing on this melanocyte itself. This melanocyte has these melanosomes in it, and in there, they have the melanin. When these melanosomes get created, they start synthesizing the melanin. They get transported from these tentacles into the cells, and then they spread the melanin inside and in between the cells, and that's where the color comes from. So anything that controls the creation of these melanosomes inside the melanocytes, anything that helps it transfer, imagine this as being a slide. If this slide doesn't work properly, everything gets stuck in here and it doesn't get to the cells. But if I put some slippery stuff in that slide, then these melanosomes get transferred easier and then started releasing the melanin. So another thing that when we design a good formulation is that we pay attention to these melanosomes. We're looking for ingredients that upregulate the formation of the melanosomes and also the transfer of these melanosomes to your skin. So that is the part 2 that is very important when you're designing a formulation. Now, we get to the part that a lot of people don't want to touch, okay? That's called the melanin synthesis. Now, I have created put the pathway here. It can get very messy. That's why I drew this here, because it's a little bit messy. A lot of people don't like looking at it, and a lot of people, if they don't have an organic chemistry background, they really have a hard time to understand.
This is also why, when you're talking about hyperpigmentation or pigmentation or melasma, and people will say, can I just use alpha-arbutin, or can I use vitamin C, or can I use glutathione, or can I use azelaic, or can I use hydroquinone, right? It's not, or tranexamic. It's not that simple, because depending on which road, where the problem is, that's why each one of those ingredients takes a different route. Each one of those ingredients affects a different signal. So when we're opening up a pathway, it is many, many roads are leading to this. And this is why sometimes when you'll say, my girlfriend used azelaic and it got rid of it, but it didn't work for me, so your product doesn't work. That's not the case. That's the wrong pathway for you. Your problem is somewhere else. Your problem is somewhere else, exactly.
Right. So let me give you a very simple analogy. 2 people have headaches, and they both take acetaminophen. It helps one and not the other. because the mechanism where acetaminophen was working was helping one, and the other one, that mechanism was not the cause of the headache. The mechanism is something else.
Right.
Then maybe ibuprofen works for them. Okay?
Right.
So this is where we are going. So I'm taking this really, really complicated thing. I'm going to make it very simple for you. Okay? So let's go. Key things to remember. The whole process of making a melanin, just imagine you have a bunch of Legos that you're making the house. The basic building block of that house is that block. It starts with an amino acid called tyrosine, okay? If there's no tyrosine, that means like a bakery that has no dough, it has no flour. It can't cook, it can't make it. You can have the best bakery ever, but if there is no flour, it cannot synthesize, it cannot bake. So this is the tyrosine. You need this tyrosine. Now, this tyrosine to eventually get converted into the melanin, there's this, remember this complicated reaction that I created here? It needs enzymes, okay? Enzymes facilitate reactions. Now, out of all that complicated thing, I want you to remember three things. One is tyrosinase, and then I'm going to call it TYRP1, which is standing for tyrosinase-related protein 1. So TYRP1 and TYRP2 with the tyrosinase is the one that controls that melanogenesis, the melanin synthesis inside the cells. That's very important. Now, sometimes when your skin is having problem with light spots, or sometimes when you get dark, this process is working properly, and the problem is the highway. So everything inside is, imagine if I have that bakery, I'm making all the bread, but there are no trucks. There are no trucks to take the bread, to take it from the factory to the store. Okay, so this is the analogy I can give you. So that's why I'm saying that not only you need to have the dough, you need to have the machinery to make the bread, and then you need to be able to transfer the bread. So remember these three things: tyrosinase, tyrosinase-related protein 1, and tyrosinase-related protein 2. These are the three enzymes. So when we want to reduce pigmentation, a lot of these ingredients, like for example hydroquinone, one of the mechanisms, some of them work on more than one mechanism. It stops the tyrosinase activity. It deactivates the enzyme. So when there is no enzyme, just imagine that factory doesn't have any electricity.
That's turning it off. It's down-regulating.
It down-regulates it. So, but the problem comes here is that a lot of formulators that don't understand the biochemistry of pigmentation, all they can think of is this tyrosine and this tyrosinase. And they only use ingredients that are is concentrating on cooking that bread, but they're not looking after the transportation, they're not looking after the delivery and all those things. So if you want to reduce the delivery of the bread, you have to deactivate the trucks. We need to work in a negative way. We need to deactivate the trucks. We need to reduce the electricity inside that factory. We need to not bring enough flour into the factory. So all of these things, it ends up having less bread at the store, which is when we want to make our skin lighter, that's exactly what we want to do.
So instead of in here producing 500 bubbles a minute, it's going to produce 250 bubbles a minute, or
Right.
50 bubbles, or depending on the ingredient or how they turn it off.
Right, exactly. So less bubbles, less melanin synthesis. But inside the melanin synthesis, if there is less tyrosinase, then there is less melanin inside these bubbles to be delivered. Now, let's
So can we go back one thing too? I want to clear this up. So when these bubbles, these melanosomes come up, they have a certain shade. So that shade then gets lightened or darkened depending on an activity.
The activity that is based on this manufacturing. So the amount of shade or the amount of pigment that is inside those bubbles now is based on here. But if there's no bubbles, then these things cannot be created. Okay? So, I made this to kind of summarize the whole thing for you guys. We've worked from the bottom up. Okay?
Inside out.
Inside out. No. Now, first thing is we need, if we want to make our skin lighter, okay, this is what we're talking about first. First of all, we need to reduce these melanocytes. The less melanocytes, the less of everything. So when we talk about transforming growth factor and alpha MSH and those ingredients, those are the ones that turn this synthesis of these melanocytes, they bring it down. Then we're talking about the formation of the bubbles inside here. The less bubbles we have in there, the more we control, or the more we control the transfer of these bubbles to the cells. We don't put any gas in those trucks, then they can't deliver the bread, okay? And then we cannot have any breads, they have no color. So step number 2 is the formation of melasma. Then inside those bubbles, we can also control how much melanin is being synthesized. And that's where the tyrosinase and all these, like vitamin C is a tyrosinase inhibitor. That's one of the mechanisms. So if your problem is not the synthesis here, but the problem is too much transfer, guess what? The tyrosinase control is not going to help you much. If you have too many melanocytes, controlling that tyrosinase is not going to help you out. You have to go further down. Now, we talked about then we talk about the deposition of it. So these melanosomes needs to transfer the melanin into the cell. There's steps that we can control that, right? And then we're talking about, did I write that twice? I wrote that twice, sorry. And then the last part is actually when these melanins accumulate on the top, Manuela, you take it away. What do? We want to do exfoliation.
So it all depends. So sometimes you're going to have superficial issues on the skin, that is hyperpigmentation superficial. Sometimes it's a bit of a trauma from an acne scar or a little bit of sun damage. Then other times it's much more deep-seated, like a melasma, right? And so this way, each one requires a different active to deal with it, right? So it's not just cell turnover. That's why when you have hyperpigmentation and people say, well, I'm just going to get a peel. Well, you can peel all day long, but if this is still acting up, and sometimes peeling it excites it even more because now it gets stressed out and it gets different information into that melanocyte, so that it gets different, excited. So it says, remember, its job is to protect you. All it's ever trying to do is to create a shield or dim the UV exposure. But if you give it mixed messages or you overdo it, sometimes you destroy it, you weaken its ability, or sometimes you strengthen its ability depending on what you're doing. That's why it's important to understand the mechanism and understand what ingredients are addressing which layer or which pathway.
Let me give you a simple example. If you go on a nice vacation and you go away for 2 weeks and you get a nice tan, your skin gets darker, okay? If you use exfoliation, you're gonna lose that tan a lot faster, but it doesn't affect the pigmentation that much because that's at a deeper layer. So if you have age spots, don't think that just using alpha hydroxy acid is going to help. It may make it a little bit lighter, but it's not going to do a great job.
Because it doesn't affect the
deeper layer. Or all those activities, all these activities that I wrote down here, the alpha hydroxy acids, they don't work on it, or even the beta hydroxy acids. So this is really the whole story of pigmentation. Now, this is something that I'm going to end the discussion here in terms of talking about it, but
next week
I've made a little chart here which really is 100 of what I could just bring. This can go on for pages. Basically, I have put the mechanisms right across. Just as an example, we're going to get into the details of this a little bit more next time. And then I've put ingredients. And then wherever it's red, that's where that ingredient or that natural extract actually works on which mechanism. So is it the tyrosinase? Even is it inhibiting the amino acid tyrosine itself? Is it going on TRP1, TRP2, MITF, alpha MSH, and the list goes on. So when our job as a formulation chemist and biochemist is that when we design a product, we want to make sure that we go universal. Mm-hmm. The reason that we go universal is that we pick on all those mechanisms and we select so we can do a better coverage. So it takes the guessing game out because an individual cannot be 100% sure. We don't have a probe in the science of skincare that we can put on the skin and say, oh, your problem for pigmentation is this mechanism.
And only this
mechanism.
Only
your problem is only this. We don't have that, unfortunately, not yet. Maybe one day we will have a probe that can actually, from the information it gets from the skin, it can tell you this mechanism is the problem. But we don't have that at our disposal right now. So it's important that we cover all those areas so that when a person uses the product, the chance of having a success is going to dramatically improve, and you don't have to guess or get disappointed that, well, I used this brightening product and it didn't work.
And then ultimately, too, when you're making a formulation, the idea is success in getting the problem solved without destroying the future ability of your skin to function normally or properly or in your best interest. And a lot of times there are ingredients that are very effective. They get the job done in the short term and then change the future of your skin in a not so great way.
Right.
And this is why you see some people end up with, pop spots.
Now, let me there are some ingredients that act on the melanosomes and melanocytes, mostly melanocytes, and they destroy them. If the destruction of the melanocytes, an ingredient I give you, one example I give you is an ingredient called monobenzone, okay? Monobenzone,
you don't want to use it.
You don't want to use it unless it's prescribed by a doctor, and I tell you why a doctor may prescribe it. Monobenzone will go into the skin and permanently destroy the genetic coding for creating more melanocytes. So when the monobenzone goes on the skin, it destroys permanently these pigments, okay? So your skin will completely be of no color, colorless, okay? Like a vitiligo skin, okay? Now, that sometimes has its own place because there are people that have vitiligo and they don't like it. Some people are it's a personal thing, okay? Some people may not like it. And they may decide that, okay, I have no hope to bring the color back in this area and this patchiness really bothers me. I rather be completely no color.
Yeah.
So that is when they may decide to go and use monobenzone. Should be under 100% control of a good dermatologist. And if you ever try to go that route, I am sure your dermatologist will advise you that your skin has no sun protection anymore, and you must, by all means, use an amazing sunscreen and protection on your skin.
Because your skin will be much more vulnerable. Any questions? Okay, let's get to questions and then we're going to wrap it up because I know this was heavy. This is probably a lot more complicated than a lot of people are used to in the sense of skincare, but this is what to expect from Isomers. We're going to go deep down. We're going to treat you at a level that is, we expect everybody to be at a certain level of understanding. We're not going, we make it as simple as possible, but at the same way, we want to expose you to as much information as possible so you can see and understand the pathways, and we're not just going to try to sugarcoat things. We want to really show you what's
Right.
going on.
Question.
Yes.
What causes vitiligo?
Very good point. I briefly mentioned it. You look at these melanocytes, and I remember I told you the melanocytes, the cells that actually create the melanosomes. There's 1 to every 36 cells roughly. So these are responsible for coloring of this. So now imagine if for some reason my body's defense mechanism, my immune system, gets the wrong information. They gets bad information, and this information is telling my immune system that these melanocytes are bad. You need to get rid of them. So your own immune system starts attacking these melanocytes and destroys them
In certain areas.
in specific areas. And then you get those white spots because there's no color. That's called vitiligo. There are times that there are some medicinal ingredients with UV light that stimulates those stem cells to make more melanocytes. Sorrel is one ingredient with UV light. This is a common therapy that some people have had good success with vitiligo when they go under those medications and the cream and then the ingestions and then UV light. It helps it to come back, but it is a little bit of a hit and miss. It's not 100%.
Next.
How to get rid of melasma on brown skin?
It's the same. There is no difference. The mechanism that I showed you is the same. So you need to go and really control a little bit of all those 4 processes.
Right.
So this is the chart that I'm going to explain a little bit more.
Next
So
week. Next week we're going to get into
you
it
need
even
to have
deeper.
a multifunctional brightening product that works on all those levels.
But I think some ingredients, so vitamin C won't be enough, but something like maybe an azelaic north of 14% is going to be much more beneficial when
Right.
you have melasma, because that's actually what's used at 14% and higher. They use it to treat tranexamic acid.
That's another good one, yes.
For melasma, yep.
Product that you recommend for dark spots?
I like
Listen,
glutathione.
look, as Isomers products or in general?
Our product, I would recommend our glutathione. I like it.
Glutathione is also very good for freckled skin because when we go into this mechanism, so there's a part that goes to eumelanin and there's a part that goes to phenylalanine. So it's just imagine like a river that divides into 2. One makes the pigmentation for red, yellow, and the other. And glutathione is the one that upregulates towards the regular pigmentation, not the red and yellow. But also, it also inhibits the overall pigmentation to some extent.
And that's why I always talk about, like, I love glutathione, I love the glutathione, but it's actually better for brown skin, the glutathione. So if you had to choose between vitamin C and glutathione, and you have brown skin, I would pick glutathione, right? Because we understand this mechanism. So this is something that, again, it's personal preference, but when you understand more about the chemistry and you understand more about what you're turning on and off, but also color-wise, where did it go? Nope. All right, I want to go to the, yeah, I want to, this one. When you go, like, this is going to give you more, like, this is going to be more for glutathione people, more vitamin C people kind of idea. But I always go this way because I think it gives much more uneven pigmentation overall.
Right. I agree with Manuela. I take it one more step. I go multi-level. So you want, when you look at this chart, you want to go something that, when you go across all these ingredients, something that covers all of them.
Yeah.
That's where you get the best result.
Next.
What about azelaic acid 20% to treat hyperpigmentation?
All right, so let's talk about mechanisms. When we talked about these mechanisms that cause this pigmentation,
And they're talking hyperpigmentation is more red, right?
not only that, but overall, we were talking about what tickles these melanocytes. So one of the things that tickles the melanocytes, and I was gonna get to that next week, but since you asked the question, is environmental stress and inflammation. Okay, so inflammation causes hyperpigmentation. And one of the things that azelaic acid is really good at is a great anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
So it will work to some extent, but it's not a guarantee because we don't know where in here is your problem for pigmentation. So if that pigmentation is overstimulation here because of inflammation, you're gonna get good results. But if your problem is not because of that, you may be doing your skin a lot of good, but it may not necessarily address getting rid of that pigmentation completely.
The difference between hyperpigmentation and melasma.
I think, in my opinion, is the level where the depigmentation is. It is at the more on the surface or is more or less at the bottom. But honestly, it's both referring to hyperpigmentation, in my opinion.
But there are some, yes, they're both. Now hyperpigmentation is just like the blanket for everything.
And also sometimes regarding the pattern that is on the skin, how the pattern is formed on the skin, the terminology changes. The melasma could be wider, more patchy. Hyperpigmentation could be more sharp spots like beauty marks a little bit, like age spots. That is another difference.
All good? All right, thank you so much. Okay, so this was lesson 2. We really I hope you really enjoyed the presentation. We look forward to your feedback and your comments. Remember, like, share, and subscribe. Tell the world, all right, that we are in the house. And next Thursday, we're going to show you
Now
our
we're going to
chart.
talk about the ingredients and what each ingredient is. Well, we try to cover quite a few popular ingredients because the list really goes on.
Right, so we're going to talk about the evidence-based ingredients, where they go,
Right.
what they do to the skin,
how
to
they
the
do
skin,
it.
how they do it. And so this way, this is going to be like news you can use. This is stuff that you can say, okay, this is why my vitamin C works when this happens, and this is why I actually need something else
Right.
or glutathione when I need something else. So we're going to hope that at the end of this next week's conversation, you'll know more about the ingredients to choose and be able to make better choices for your skin, because it's always about the age and stage of your skin. It's never one right thing all the time. It's going to change. And your needs will change. So it's good that if your education gets updated so that you can actually do things for yourself and empower yourself with the education. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you have a really good day. We really love being with you. We want everybody to study, do a good deed, take care of yourself, love yourself.
And do something good, no matter how small it could be for somebody else today.